Okie dokie. How you guys doing? It's been a bit. Um, New room, new setup. I just saw Bryan Cranston tonight, and I had a few interesting notes of what he had to say. So, I'm gonna start by talking about what Bryan Cranston had to say as far as life philosophy, and then about art, because I think both are kind of interesting. And then there's some little anecdotes in there. As far as life philosophy, he was a big proponent of doing uh, things outside of his comfort zone. So he gave an anecdote of he got fired from a soap opera, which was funny because, just of the way he told it. But it was in part funny because it led him to doing a marathon. So he got fired. 2 days, I guess, in unemployment, he was doing unemployed antics. And he decided 2 days after, I'm going to go to Central Park and I'm going to film stuff. So he goes to Central Park, and the marathon, I don't know if it's like the New York Marathon, Manhattan Marathon, something. The big marathon that happens in New York every year was happening. So he starts recording stuff. He sees, and he describes like, oh, there's these two fat police officers standing like this. So I'd recorded that. There were people running through the finish line, and then it's like this big showcase of humanity because there's people in wheelchairs, there's people with one leg, prosthetic legs, there's people young and old and everything in between. And he was like, I could never do that. And then he thinks, I can do that. So then he does it. And a year later, he trained, and then he did the marathon. He wasn't even a runner before then. He always did sports, but so he also did stand-up comedy for like 9 months just because he couldn't do it. So anytime he'd have a fear, he would be like, I have to get over this fear. So he lives his life always trying to be a novice at something. He makes a mezcal company, I think with Aaron Paulson from co-star with him in Breaking Bad. They go to Oaxaca, Mexico, find a mezcal, and then distribute it all over the world. Like, that's interesting. And they were complete novices. They had no idea how to do that. Same thing with like a lot of his creative endeavors. Yeah, I mean, everybody starts as a novice at some point. So he said, always challenge yourself. Whenever you feel, similar to what David Bowie said, whenever you feel you're just out of your depth, that's where you can do something incredible. So that was great advice. He also gave advice to artists and anybody in an interview. He said, your power your power has to lie in a silent confidence in yourself, not boasting, but you must be humble, obviously, but a quiet confidence in yourself, in your work, knowing that there's a value to what you do, and when you have that confidence, you can operate out of abundance, and you can think, okay, what am I bringing to the table? What am I bringing my employers or these agents or whatever? Not, well, what can I get out of them? How does this position help me? But what can I give you? So he was talking about auditioning for Malcolm in the Middle, and he was like, okay, I'm going to rehearse for this. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to give it to them as a gift. And then after that, whatever happens, happens. So that detachment is it almost struck me as sort of quasi-Buddhist. Just in how, maybe Stoic even, just how he had this detached disposition in such a way that everything, basically, in the way the Stoics would use their emotions as tools, not to be unfeeling, but to channel their feelings into actions that would benefit them. He treated his art in such a way as like a tool, so he very much views himself like an artist. This actually relates to another point, which I'll get to once I wrap this up. So basically, he was talking about operate out of abundance, give everything up as a gift, and then whatever happens is a happy, other thing. And he said that in interviews, and then I think he probably extrapolates that to a lot of his life. In whatever happens, happens. You just have to give what you can, and if you're a giver and you're not a taker, good things will happen. And interestingly, even when bad things happen, like you get unemployed, if life blocks you here, it just gives you if you keep trying to push this way, sometimes you just got to have another path open up, you know. And then he did the marathon, and that led to other employment, I'm sure, somehow. But yeah, so he was very in tune with his intuitive self, but also, so this gets back to another point. He views himself as an artist and an artisan. He says he's a professional novice, which, you know, a lot of actors say things like that. And he talked about working on Wes Anderson films, and Wes Anderson is a genius. I didn't realize he would do this. I like Wes Anderson films, but he makes an animatic of the film. It like literally animates it like in an animatic form, the entire film, all 90 minutes. He voices every character, and then he gives that to the actors. I don't know if he does just that or with a script. Maybe it's just that. It seemed like that from what Bryan Cranston said. But basically, he said, instead of looking at it like an artisan with tools, I was an archer trying to hit the mark for Wes. And I thought that was really cool. Because, I mean, that just shows how brilliant and innovative Wes Anderson is, I guess, as a filmmaker. But just the professionalism of Bryan Cranston tied with, like, the seemingly genuineness of him. You know, that's the tricky thing about actors, right? You can't tell if they're great people or if they're acting as great people, right? You know, yeah. So, those are my main thoughts. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. Oh, well, you know, he did the typical, like, what was your most memorable moment working on this? And it was, you know, he talked about Seinfeld. Oh, I forget the name of the doctor. What does he say? I forget what he says. But, you know, he did the lines, he did the things. He said, so he did, I am the one who chomps. He said that, which was kind of funny, you know, because gators and blah, 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 UF, you know. But I thought that was cool. I wish I took a video. If you see this and you took a video, tell me, because I want it. If you somehow find this. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I may upload a part 2 if I'm like, oh, I forgot this, and this is really important. But yeah, those are the main things that I think many people can, you know, take away. So yeah, anyway, signing off. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a good one, man. Or woman. Or, I hate when that happens. Have a good one, you. Okay, I remember. I took notes. So, number 1, this is the funny one. There's 3 things I'm about to say. Number 1, he said, I'm very attracted to damaged men. Let me rephrase that. Yeah. He was talking about roles in acting, but that was really funny. That might have been the loudest, like, laughter in the whole thing. Number 2, he said that in the story/lesson of him saying always be a novice, he said he took snowboarding lessons from a 16-year-old, which was really humbling for him. And I thought that was kind of funny because I was imagining myself, you know, today was the first day of class, and I was like, I wonder if he knows how to play the guitar. Like, when he said that, I was like, I wonder if my professor would have that with me. And, because, I mean, I'm having that with my professor. Like, I feel humbled just in how little I know about, you know, all of this, like, you know, laboratory methods and psych and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it was interesting to think about the master is the master to some, but then also the master's the master, especially to students. But I mean, I guess in general, he'd still be considered a master. But then he's also a student, because to be a master, you have to be a student. And if you're going to be a great master, grandmaster, you must continue being a student. So I thought that was interesting. Just and just to go back to that point, like, the grand, like, appreciation he had for life and experiencing life was just brilliant. You know, when spiritual teachers say, our goal is we're the universe experiencing itself. I was reading a book called, I think it was called Irreducible by Federico Fagin, I think? Federico Fagin, yeah. And I got to, I'm not done with the book, but he was talking about that lesson and his sort of philosophy of things, and it just keeps coming around of just our experiences, we're just the universe sort of experiencing itself. Interestingly, I saw Vsauce video where he said we're the universe ignoring itself, which is a pretty valid take, especially in neuroscience, because there's so much stimuli that you could be reacting to, but your would that be a reticular activating system? It's only like, no, only this small trickle of everything you see. Because think about it. The hum in the background, you weren't paying attention to that. Well, hopefully you weren't until I just said it, tons of things like that. Just look at all the people and look at all the things around you. Like, there's a ladder right there. I didn't realize the ladder was there when I walked in. I didn't think about it, My conscious awareness wasn't there until now. Like, literally since I walked into my house, Anyway. Interesting food for thought. Number 3. Number 3, he makes a distinction about art. He says, this was an implied point, but this is just sort of what I got out of it. Great art, or great writing, has to do with characters like water and oil. And if you can get them to work together, that's golden, he said. Think Jesse and Walter, or the wife and husband, Malcolm in the Middle. I forget their names. Well, but her name, I don't remember. But anyway, Jesse and Walter, like, they're opposites. They're so opposite that Jesse was supposed to die in the first episode just because they didn't see a point for them to work. But then when they worked, and mostly because of Aaron Paulson, and then his chemistry with Bryan Cranston, it's like you got to hold on to that, because like foils, we just love dialectics, we love two opposites, we love that, so much so that that's a whole thing in mythologies and blah blah blah. And then he also said great writing is the plot's going somewhere and then it turns and you're like, whoa, why'd it turn? And then you think about it and you're like, oh, that made perfect sense, I just didn't see it coming. That's what Breaking Bad's all about, right? So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, okay. That's the point. I was about to sneeze. But that's the point. Thank you for watching. I tacked on like this 5-minute part, but I hope you liked it. Anyway, signing off. See ya.